Hashem wants us to enjoy the world, but He wants us to enjoy the world as mentioned, not as animals. Right? And that's where the importance of character traits come in. But you can only do that because that calls for sacrifice. To be rid of selfishness causes giving up of oneself. And this is where I learned so much from seeing people who were addicted to dangerous practices, whether it was alcohol or drugs or sexual promiscuity or pornography or compulsive gambling, and they were driven to it, and they couldn't resist it. And they went on with it for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, spending a life in it motivated by, if it feels good, do it. And don't think about the consequences. And so Hashem put me in a place where I was exposed to people who had lived destructive lives of self-gratification, destructive lives of simply following their animalistic desires and having nothing else in life other than pleasure. And this was so that they brought ruination to themselves and to their families. And then something happened, and they changed. The Rabbi Twerski referred to the change as being a spiritual awakening. What is a spiritual awakening? A spiritual awakening is simply realizing I was not created to be an intelligent animal. I was created to serve Hashem. And I've seen some people think, oh, Avram Avinu, his outstanding achievement was to teach people that there is one God. Because at that time the world was flooded with idolatry. And they worshipped everything that they came into sight with. And this one Sefer says, no, that was not his main achievement. Because a person expects that God is there to serve him and to satisfy his wishes. He says, that's also idolatry. What Avram Avinu has said, you were created to serve Hashem, not that Hashem is here to serve you. And the service of Hashem and doing what Hashem wants and setting ourselves aside, that is what has enabled us to have the kind of Mesilas Nefesh, the kind of self-sacrifice as individuals and as a nation that has brought us to this day. And I've seen some people do that. But why did they do it? What stops an alcoholic after 30 years of drinking to give up? You say, yes, maybe he has liver disease, maybe he was arrested for drunk driving. I've seen cases where that was not so. I've seen cases where the only thing that happened was that the person came to a realization, I am too good to let this happen to me. There's a beautiful young man in Pittsburgh. He's not young anymore. He was young when I took him out of jail in 1972. Then he was a young man. Now he is 44 years free of drugs. Right? And he's become a real mensch. Right? Sensitive, ready to help everyone. Right? And some people have, through the phenomenon of addiction, they've learned some important lessons of life. There was one businessman who was an alcoholic, and he became sober. And several years after he became sober, some people had a conspiracy to do him in, and they ruined him, and they made him bankrupt. And I met him one day, and he said to me, you know, I'm full of anger and full of bitterness about what they did to me. But I will go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous tonight, and I'll try to drop off my anger and resentment. Because you see, doctor, if I hang on to my anger and resentment, I will drink again. Right? This man realized a spiritual principle. Right? that hanging on a grudge to someone else is absolutely foolishness. It's like holding a grudge against someone. One alcoholic said that's like swallowing poison and thinking it's going to kill the other guy. Right? And realizing these are destructive feelings. Hanging on to anger instead of getting rid of it, right, is a self-destructive thing. And we should realize ourselves that we are too good a people to let this happen to us. And so, I've written books about self-esteem. How can a person possibly help self-esteem if he doesn't think his life is worth anything? Someone has said it so clearly. If there's nothing worth dying for, then there's nothing worth living for. Self-esteem is because I believe I have a function. And what is my function? Well, going through the myriad kind of activities of every life is a transient function. But it's not an ultimate purpose. There has to be some ultimate purpose that should give our lives value.